Cassie and Brian face relationship issues due to Cassie's infidelity. In order to figure out a way to save their relationship, they choose to rent a house with a big pool and a wine cellar for the rest of the next 6 days. On their way to the rented house, they passed by a building who looked like it was abandoned, and for a brief moment they believe would be their new residence for the following 6 days, but the Uber driver updated his map and went to the correct address. They arrived at the cottage in the middle of the nowhere, and the landlord leave all the house just for themselves. They checked the house and got prepared for a romantic evening. While they were enjoying their evening, they agreed to lock the phones and just enjoy their own presence. But when Brian took Cassie's phone to lock, he noticed she was called by someone else and he got angry. He returns to the pool where he starts to make out with Cassie. He suddenly stopped because he had the feeling that some garden gnomes were watching them. Cassie got angry, exit the pool and go to the bedroom. Brian tried to speak with her, but she fall asleep. During their sleep, Brian wake up and start to check the house due to a sound that he heard. It was the music machine. But he was not aware of the fact that someone is watching them. Cassie wake up in the morning and find Brian sleeping. She made the breakfast for him and went out for a run. During her run, she injured her leg and tried to find a way to get back to the house. A car passed by, and when she saw is not stopping, she yelled at the driver. Driver stopped, looked at her and asked her to help. He took off her shoes, checks her ankle and offered to bandage. He left her at the house and she offered him a drink, but he refused her. When they said goodbye, he kissed Cassie on the cheek. Cassie returned to the house and finds some ice to put on the leg. When someone enters in the house, she think is Brian, but it was the driver who said he changed his mind. Cassie offered him a coffee, and while they were speaking, Brian came down. She introduces the driver to Brian, said is Federico, their landlord neighbor, and let him know he lives in the house they passed by, which look abandoned. While they were speaking, Federico mentioned about a small town close to the cottage which they can visit, but informed them that in that area there are no cabs or Uber who will come to pick them up, and offered them his help to drive them there. After Federico left, Cassie went to take a shower and invite Brian to join her. While she was taking the shower, Brian was thinking if he should propose Cassie to marry him or not. He went to the bathroom, and while he tried to have sex with Cassie, he remembered the moment when he came home and find her with another man. This make him stop and cause Cassie frustration. During this time, Federico was watching them from some surveillance cameras which were put on the house they rent. On the next day they went to the town as they agreed, and on the road Federico asked them how they meet. Brian tried to lie, but Cassie said they meet on Tinder. The atmosphere between Cassie and Brian was tense. They said about the fact that on one of their dates Brian cooked for her, and since then he never done that. They managed to reach town, and when they split, Federico asked if they want to pick them up, but Brian refused. Cassie got angry by his attitude towards Federico, and Brian explained to her that he is nice with her just because he is into her, due to the looks he pointed out. Federico parked to a corner and listened to their whole arguing from the street. Cassie and Brian start a big fight in the middle of the street. Cassie agreed that it was her fault for the whole situation that bring them there, and Brian recognized that he keeps see the scene with her and the guy she cheat him on, and this is the thing that is stopping him to move forward. She tried to explain him again that she was drunk and it happened just a few minutes. She explained that she rejected him several weeks before when she was sober, and those short moments were some weakness moments because they had an argument before. Brian said he knows he is still calling her and that she speaks with him at the phone since they were here. Cassie got upset and left. She went out on the streets and tries to get some money to go back home, while Federico comes out from nowhere and helped her with the ATM. He helped her take the money to pay a cab and go back home, and she thanks him for all his help. During this time Brian was passing by a bar and start drinking. Federico enter in the same bar as Brian and they start speaking about the fact he is single in the bar. They continue to drink while Cassie already reach home. Brian explains the whole story of her infidelity to Federico and admits in front of Federico that he wishes he could do the same to Cassie and cheat on her. Meantime at home, Cassie went in the cellar and took some bottles of wines. In the bar Federico and Brian saw some girls, and Federico went to them and introduced them to Brian using the excuse they looked at him. The girls joined them at the table. Federico drugged Brian and took his phone. He started a game 2 truths and a lie, and he mentioned the fact that Cassie was home alone and he has the key. That moment Brian realized he was drugged and Federico represents a danger. Federico went back to the house, find Cassie sleeping, and he start touching her face and mouth. She felt him and licked his finger thinking is Brian, who returned home and asked him to come back to the bed. On the next morning, Brian woke up in a hotel room and started search his phone. Got out the building and tried to search for it on the bar. He remembered he left the bar with 2 girls, and since the bar was closed, he find a cab to go back to the rented house to search for Cassie. He reaches home and starts call for Cassie. He took the house phone and called her on the mobile. She realized he'd just come home and asked him where have him been. He said he stayed at the hotel and took a night off to consider the things between them. When she asked him why he did not answer the phone, he said he thinks he lost the phone. Brian went to the shower, and during the shower he reminds some things from the past night, the fact that Federico mentioned she is home alone. He came down and asks Cassie about last night, if he came to the house. She said no and argues with him that Federico was nice to them and will not make them anything. Brian said to Cassie he would go for a walk and went to the house that Federico mentioned as his place, the abandoned one they saw on the first day. Suddenly, Federico appeared at their house and entered without notice with a dead rabbit and said he will cook for them. Brian finds out that he is not living on the house he said to and run back to Cassie to let her know. When he arrived there, he finds them in the garden drinking wine, and Federico was telling Cassie about the night in the bar with Brian. Brian asked Federico to come in the kitchen with him and confronted him about the fact that is not his landlord neighbor. Then Federico started to blackmail him about the girls he spent the night with and said that he only want for them to eat from his rabbit soup he was preparing to them. Cassie interrupts their fight and they start to eat. Brian refused to eat and start asking him about the relationship he has with their landlord and about the house he presented as his. He asked him about his love life and his family. Federico confirmed he's single and he continued to hit on Cassie and lie to her that Brian speak the last night about her and how in love is about her. Federico's speech had a lot of meaningful details related his actions while he was just referring for the way they hunt the rabbit. When Cassie starts to clean up the dinner, Federico offered to help. Then Brian stops him and threats him with the police. After he left, Brian closed all the windows and doors and went to Cassie. He starts to explain what he saw to the abandoned house. During this time, from a separate room, Federico was watching them and listened to them. Brian called the landlord to tell him about Federico, but he did not answer and left him a message. When he returned back to the living room, told Cassie everything what happened last night in the bar and tried to sort out their issues. Cassie assures Brian she loves him and wants to make their relationship work again. After they agree to make their relationship better, Brian go down to the cellar to take a bottle of wine to drink with Cassie, but suddenly the cellar door closed and he remained trapped on the cellar. He called Cassie to come to open, but she was in the bedroom and could not hear him. Federico entered in the house and put some music on, left some lingerie on the bed for Cassie with the message to wear it, make it believe as a surprise from Brian. Meanwhile in the cellar, Brian was trying to get out and he discover another room behind some wine racks and start to investigate where that path go. In the bedroom, Cassie was waiting for Brian in her lingerie, which she thinks was the surprise from him, and put the scarf on his eyes. Then Federico come and start kissing and touching her, pretending to be Brian. In the cellar, Brian discover a way out into the kitchen and made a lot of noise. Federico heard and run away, leaving Cassie alone in the bed. When Brian reached the living room, he saw Cassie naked on the TV in the bed and saw the scene that Federico made earlier with her just to make him think she will cheat on him again and that she is enjoying Federico's presence. Upstairs, Cassie find Brian's phone on the bed, and on the phone she saw a video with a girl kissing Brian while he was drunk in the bar and another video while they were trying to have sex with him. They confronted each other in the living room and start screaming at each other, but when Cassie threw the phone in the wall, she broke a window and found a camera hidden by Federico. They just figure it out all the way. They realized that Federico was behind all the story that happened and tried to call police, but the phone line was closed by Federico. While they tried to find Cassie's phone, Federico come up and Brian tried to calm him down and ask him to let them go home. But Federico took out a knife and tried to kill Brian. They start to fight each other. When Cassie saw Federico over Brian strangled him, she took a walking stick and hit him several times, lost her control and killed Federico. In the same moment they saw a light on the window and noticed someone is coming by. They heard some knocking at the door and got scared. They try to hide Federico's body, when a guy entered on another door, asking if someone is home. Brian come by and start to speak with the new man. He notices Eduardo, their landlord, which come to check them out because of the call he received a few hours ago from Brian. Brian asks Eduardo if he knows Federico, and the landlord told Federico's story and asked them to check the rest of the house to make sure everything is safe for them. Cassie and Brian hide on another room and start to panic about the crime that Cassie made, and they start to figure out a way to escape from this. Eduardo enters to Federico's hidden room and finds the surveillance cameras. He seems to be aware of his actions and he starts watching on the cameras what Cassie and Brian did and how they killed Federico. Eduardo had a nervous breakdown when he figured out everything and go down to the room where he left Cassie and Brian and find only Cassie and confronted her. He considers she is nervous and he start hitting the cameras and try to make Cassie confess the crime. Brian approached with the walking stick and tried to get closer to Eduardo, but he took out a gun and pointed out to Brian. He said that he knows what they did and now he has to kill them. When Say turned to Brian, Cassie took Federico's knife which she hidden on the support from the hall and stabbed Eduardo in the back. With a last power, Eduardo tried to kill Brian, but he hit him with the walking stick in the head. Since Eduardo was still alive, Brian took his gun and shot him. Brian starts to search the cameras from the house and find the surveillance room where he found many more tapes. They burn all the tapes and bury Federico and Eduardo. After their long night, Cassie went to the shower to clean herself and Brian went together with her. She asked him if all the tapes and cameras were destroyed and asks him what will happen with them, if this will remain their secret. They agreed this will remain between them and after a long period they managed to finally have sex together in the shower. But one of the garden gnomes had a camera, and all their actions and the murders was sent online in the internet on a site Eye on You, which was broadcasting in many countries. But none of the people who watched the site consider this as real and just passed by. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification, so you can watch more video like this. Thanks for watching.